A beloved Louisiana pastor collapses mid-sermon. The choir director vanishes. A decomposing woman's body is found buried under the pulpit. And the church's first lady? Turns out she never existed. Police can't ID the body. Church members deny any woman ever served as pastor's wife. And now, whispers claim this church was part of a resurrection cult tied to a series of vanished seminary students across 5 states. The autopsy reveals the woman's vocal cords were surgically removed. The pastor confesses, "She died. I brought her back." And the only person who says she heard the First Lady speak? A 10-year-old girl who claims the voice came from under the floorboards. A brutal battle for power, revenge, and justice unfolds. These aren't just stories. They're real lives, torn apart by secrets. We dive deep into chilling disappearances, unsolved crimes, and the truths buried beneath the surface. Because in the world of true crime, nothing is ever as it seems. And the ending? It will stay with you. Subscribe, share, and join us as we unravel every hidden clue. This isn't the first time someone's disappeared from Covenant Revival Church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Back in 2001, the original chapel burned to the ground. All 37 members presumed dead, except one, Pastor Caleb Rourke, known for viral healing revivals and televised sermons, is preaching live on Facebook. At the 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 49 seconds mark, something changes. His voice deepens. He says, "She's awake now," then collapses on stage. Medics rush in. The live stream cuts. In the chaos, choir director Marla Sorrell flees the building. She's caught whispering to the assistant pastor. They found her. Under police order, the sanctuary stage is torn up. Beneath it, a coffin, unmarked, decades old. Inside, a woman's decomposing body, curled into a fetal position, eyes sewn shut, hands clutching a shattered mirror. She's wearing a charred white wedding dress. Pinned to her chest, a rusted church name tag reading, First Lady Rourke. Problem is, Pastor Rourke has never been married. No records, no license, no photos. Church elders deny she ever existed, but when detectives show him the body, Pastor Rourke breaks down. He whispers, "That's her. She died in 2005, but she came back in 2020. 10-year-old Nia Sanderson, daughter of the church organist, is taken in for questioning. She tells detectives, "She sang to me through the floor. She said the pastor wasn't alone when he buried her." She leads investigators to the choir practice room. Beneath the heavy rug, carved into the floorboards, are dozens of names. All women, all scratched by fingernail. One is circled in red, Glory Rourke. Investigators run the name. It matches a 2005 missing persons report out of Jackson, Mississippi. A seminary student named Glory Thompson vanished during a religious retreat. Her roommate told police. She said she was marrying some pastor from Louisiana. That God gave her a new name. That pastor, Caleb Rourke. 2 weeks later, WBRZ Baton Rouge receives an anonymous package. Inside, a black USB drive labeled Revelation/12. 17 audio files. Each file is a recording of Pastor Rourke performing a private baptism. But there's no water, no hymns, only chanting. And behind the chanting, screams. One female voice repeats, "The mirror is the gate. Don't bury me. Break me." The 13th must be born through the mouth. Forensic analysis confirms one file was recorded inside Covenant Revival, April 2020. The exact date Rourke claimed his wife returned. Local journalist Tasha Green investigates the church's past. She uncovers its previous name, Red River Revival Tabernacle, outside Shreveport. It burned to the ground in 2001. Investigators called it an accident, but Green finds unreleased crime scene photos. One shows a scorched wedding dress near the altar. Another, a child's blackened handprint pressed to an unbroken mirror. And in the ash, written in soot, Glory. If Glory died in 2005, why was she buried in a dress that burned in 2001? And what did she mean when she told Nia, "He didn't bury me alone"? 2 days after the Baton Rouge story breaks, investigative journalist Tasha Green receives an unmarked envelope. Inside, a photo of a burned mirror, a Louisiana seminary ID labeled Glory Uma, and a handwritten note. She was the first, but not the last. There are 12. Check Detroit. Start with St. Gabriel's Refuge. Green flies to Detroit and finds the church, boarded up, condemned in 2017. But inside the chapel, beneath the pulpit, she discovers another mirror. Carved into its shattered back, 9 remain. The gate is still open. Green begins cross-referencing names from the Baton Rouge floorboards with missing persons reports across the country. She uncovers 6 confirmed cases, all young women, all vanished between 2002 to 2022, all with ties to obscure revivalist ministries. Kimmy Harper, Atlanta, Georgia, last seen after joining Fire of Zion Fellowship. Tamara Jones, Dallas, Texas, disappeared after a healing weekend. Amy Nwachukwu, Chicago, Illinois, seminary student, went missing on her birthday. Maya Asaro, Jackson, Mississippi, last text, he says God renamed me. Renee Bishop, Newark, New Jersey, choir soloist, vanished post-service. Glory Uma, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, found beneath the floorboards. All women were between the ages of 22 and 29. All had connections to churches led by male preachers with a history of miracle revivals. Each church has a sealed platform or altar, and each woman's name appears, scratched into wood beneath it. A whistleblower from House of Returning Saints in Atlanta contacts Green. He sends a video, filmed secretly during a closed-door baptism. The video shows a woman unconscious in a wedding gown, 4 men chanting in unison around a mirror placed on the altar. One man whispers, "Bride of the voice, return." Suddenly, the mirror begins to fog, and someone on the other side taps it 3 times. Green forwards the footage to an expert in folklore and ritual studies at Howard University, Dr. Ifeoma Kelso. Her conclusion? They're reenacting an obscure West African resurrection rite, but it's been twisted, Americanized, weaponized. At Mount Calvary Renewal Center in Chicago, Green sneaks into the sanctuary. Under a loose floorboard, she finds a torn page from a ritual guide, a mirror etched with 3 names, Glory, Tamara, Amy, and one chilling message scrawled beneath in lipstick. He's collecting us. We're his brides, but the last one will destroy him. Green recalls something the 10-year-old girl, Nia Coleman, once said. She said not to trust the pastor, that he didn't bury her alone. And now it's becoming clear. The men who performed these rites weren't working alone. They were following instructions. The churches were chapters. The women were chosen. And the mirrors? They weren't just gateways. They were altars. Altars to something older than the church. Something that speaks back. And when the 12th name is carved, the gate opens for good. Tasha Green goes underground to find the final 3. But someone else is watching her. A man in white who doesn't blink, who doesn't speak. And in a small town in Alabama, a church is building something beneath its foundation. Not a sanctuary, not a coffin, a wedding hall. Studio microphone. You don't raise the dead to bring them back. You raise them to bind them. Journalist Tasha Green flies to Montgomery, Alabama, following a tip from a church janitor. He claims the Harvest Pillar Assembly is preparing for a wedding, except no bride has been seen. When Tasha surveils the church, she notices a man in all white, always seated near the altar. He never speaks, never blinks. Locals call him the witness. Security footage from inside the church, leaked by the janitor, shows something disturbing. Every night at 3:17 a.m., the man walks to the pulpit, stands before a covered mirror, and whispers, "Bride of the voice, come home." Each time, the mirror rattles. Green breaks into the pastor's office and uncovers a binder titled Covenant Registry. Inside, 12 names. 9 are already checked off. Number 10, Rachel Okafor, slated for union, April 17th. Handwritten beneath it, she's resisting, still has her voice. Green runs the name. Rachel was a student at a Bible college in Houston, missing since 2021. Case closed as voluntary disappearance. Her roommate reported that Rachel began talking in her sleep, reciting verses that didn't exist. Her last journal entry: he says I'm the 10th, but the mirror isn't calling me yet. Green visits Dr. Ifeoma Kelso at Howard University again. Kelso plays a cleaned-up audio loop from one of the rebirth files. She's enhanced the background whispers. What emerges? A phrase repeated by multiple women's voices. I'm still here. I see you. He made us promises. The 11th will sing. The 12th will scream. Dr. Kelso reveals a chilling theory. They're not just victims. They're being prepared for something beyond human comprehension. A convergence. Each one a key. Back in Montgomery, Green is caught sneaking into the church basement. She's taken to the witness, who finally speaks. You've walked through their names. Now walk through their gate. He opens a trapdoor and leads her into a room lit by candles. 12 mirrors, 12 veils, 11 of them cracked. Only one remains pristine. As Green stares into it, a voice, Rachel's, echoes behind her. Tell my mother I didn't run. He renamed me, but I still remember the song. Suddenly, Green is pulled out of the room by a second janitor, the original whistleblower. They flee into the woods. Behind them, the church bell rings 12 times, though the clock reads 3:17 a.m. 12 bells, 12 mirrors, 12 brides, but only one voice. And Tasha Green, she's just been marked by it. The churches are being abandoned, mirrors shattered, pulpits torn up, but someone is still preparing the final ceremony, because the 12th bride was never missing. She was chosen, and she's already been found by the girl who hears through the floorboards. Studio microphone. If you hear her humming, it's already too late. 10-year-old Nia Coleman, the only child who claimed to hear the voice of the pastor's wife, has gone silent for weeks. Now she's speaking again, but only in song. At school in Baton Rouge, she sings a tune no one taught her, a hymn that doesn't exist in any hymnal. The veil is thin, the bride is near. Call her forth, she's meant to hear. Her teacher records it, sends it to her mother. That night, the house loses power, and from beneath the floorboards, that voice returns. She's the 12th. She can finish it. Tasha Green, still reeling from her escape in Montgomery, follows a hunch. What if the 12th bride was never an adult? She digs into the covenant registry again. Next to bride number 12, no name. Just a birth date, September 17th, 2013. That's Nia Coleman's birthday. Tasha revisits Covenant Revival Center, now under police surveillance. But she sneaks into the condemned church's east wing, once used for Sunday school. There, behind an old piano, she finds a sealed door. Behind it, a nursery, empty cribs, faded scripture murals, mirrors on every wall. In red crayon, scrawled across the ceiling, she must see herself before they all see her. Investigators release new forensic audio from the 2001 Red River fire that started it all. A neighbor, testing out a camcorder, unknowingly captured the sound of the blaze, but layered beneath the crackling flames, a woman's lullaby plays. Slowed down and reversed, it matches the melody Nia's been singing. Dr. Ifeoma Kelso calls it generational encoding. If these rituals were built on vocal imprinting, the 12th bride was meant to be born with the final note already inside her. Tasha receives a package. No return address. Inside, a USB drive. Only one file. Rachel_12M4. Rachel Okafor, the 10th bride. Recorded it days before vanishing. If you're hearing this, I've broken my mirror. I remember my name, but the song still pulls at me in dreams, and I know who she is now. Rachel names her Nia, born beneath the altar, the final gate. And then, before the audio cuts, she's not the 12th bride. She's the mother of them all. They weren't resurrecting the dead. They were preparing a vessel. The song, the mirrors, the name changes, all leading to her. And now Nia is humming again. Monday, 2:13 p.m. Nia never boards the bus after school. Security footage shows her walking into a wooded area behind Madison Charter Elementary alone. But 5 minutes later, the camera glitches. When it resumes, No trace of Nia. Just a single object left in the grass. A mirror compact, cracked down the center, and etched on the inside. I see you. Police issue an Amber Alert, but they're not the first to arrive at the scene. Tasha Green is already there, and she's not alone. A tip leads Tasha to Detroit, Michigan, a warehouse recently converted into a church. No name, no signage, just a white curtain covering the doors, and a low, constant hum inside. She sneaks in during an afternoon healing hour. Inside, people kneeling in silence, facing mirrors. On a raised platform, a girl in a red dress. It's Nia. Her eyes closed, her lips moving. She's singing a lyric Tasha's never heard. Bride of 12, gate of 1. Speak the name, and it is done. And behind her, a man steps out of the shadows. He says, "You're early, Tasha." She hasn't finished the final verse. Tasha recognizes him. Reverend Malik Coleman, Nia's father, pronounced dead in 2016 after a car crash outside Baton Rouge. But there's no mistaking him. Same voice, same scar above his lip. Only now he's calling himself the keeper of the gate. Tasha films the confrontation, whispering to her phone. He's alive, or something like it, and he says he's been waiting for her to wake up. Suddenly, the room goes dark. All mirrors glow faintly. The crowd begins humming. In unison, one low, continuous pitch, and Reverend Coleman whispers, "When the gate sings, that opens." But not just one way. Later that night, Tasha receives a voicemail. No number, just static, then a whisper. It's Rachel Okafor's voice, bride number 10. Nia isn't trapped. She's remembering. The gate isn't a door. It's a mouth, and when it sings, it's feeding. She warns, if you hear your name in the song, don't answer. You'll become part of the harmony. Before the voicemail ends, something else plays in the background. Children, singing. One voice, faint but clear. Tasha, Tasha, Tasha. This wasn't resurrection. This wasn't even worship. This was possession, disguised as revival. And Nia wasn't just chosen. She was bred to carry something back. Something that needs a name. To be born again. Wednesday, 9:46 p.m. A Facebook Live video from the Curtin Church spreads like wildfire. A woman, young, frantic, holding her phone, is whispering from a bathroom stall. "I'm at the revival. They said she'd speak if I looked long enough." She turns her phone toward the mirror. Nothing. Then the lights flicker, and a voice, clear as day, whispers, "Kendra." She gasps, drops her phone. But before the stream cuts, viewers catch one last moment. A pale, upside-down face grinning from inside the mirror. Its lips sewn shut, but moving. That video is viewed 6.2 million times in 48 hours. But Facebook removes it, and the user never logs in again. Police raid Tasha Green's apartment. She's gone, but hidden in her air vent, they find a USB drive labeled brides.spk. Inside, photos, maps, church records, and a single text file. Tasha's last notes. It's not just Baton Rouge. It's 12 cities, one for each bride. But they aren't victims. They're vessels. The name Glory isn't a person. It's a title, and once spoken by the right voice, it reactivates the gate. Attached is a redacted sermon transcript from 2001, delivered at the original Red River Tabernacle before it burned. A line underlined 3 times. Do not speak the name of the gatekeeper unless you want it to open inside you. Detective Lisa Rowe, still on the case, visits the ruins of the original church near Shreveport. She meets a retired fire marshal who says, that building didn't burn down once. It burned 13 times. Every time we rebuilt it, it caught fire again. Same pattern, same spot. Always the pulpit, and always the mirror. He pauses, then says, we buried her 13 times. But she never stayed buried, because someone kept saying her name. Hospitals in Atlanta, Phoenix, and Newark report a wave of ER visits. Symptoms: hearing voices from reflective surfaces, sudden compulsion to write names backward, hallucinations of stitched mouths. inexplicable hymns stuck in their heads. All patients claim the same thing. It started with a video, then the voice said my name, and now the mirrors, they follow me. CDC issues a quiet alert to mental health clinics. Code phrase, mirror chorus disorder. Unofficially, staff are instructed to remove all reflective surfaces, prohibit the name Glory during interviews, record any instances of synchronized humming. You thought it was about one church, one corpse, one woman who never existed. But what if she always existed? In every name scratched in wood, every voice beneath a hymn, every mirror you ever looked into. She was waiting. Glen Rock, Wyoming. Population, 2,302. Second grade teacher Ms. Halloran files an unusual incident report. Student, Bridget Lyles, age 7. She's been caught scratching the same name repeatedly into her school desk. Verity, not a student, not a teacher. No record of anyone by that name in Glen Rock. But that's not what scares Ms. Halloran. It's how the name is written. Bridget uses both hands simultaneously to carve each letter mirrored. Ite. When questioned, Bridget says calmly, Verity lives in the desk. She taught me the hymn. She said I'm the last one. FBI profiler Melanie Cruz revisits the burned archives of Red River Revival Tabernacle. She discovers a single, unscorched microcassette hidden inside a pew's baseboard. Label reads, Bride 13, do not wake. The tape plays a warped, slow sermon. Preacher's voice, deep but uneven. A line echoes clearly, There shall be 12 mirrors, but the 13th, she will be the window. Do not name her. Do not crown her. For the moment she knows what she is, all others will follow. Then children singing, a melody no one recognizes. Lyrics include, Fold her name and break the glass. Light returns when Glory laughs. Audio analysis confirms. Background acoustics match Glen Rock Elementary, but the recording is from 1999. The school didn't open until 2006. After being missing for 49 days, Tasha Green is found, alive, wandering a highway near Rapid City, South Dakota. She's barefoot, unresponsive. Her arms are wrapped in bloodied gauze. Inside her pockets, a wedding veil, a list of 12 names, and a 13th line blank. At the hospital, Tasha finally whispers, She's not the bride. She's the altar. The first wasn't Glory. The first was Verity. Glory kept her locked, but someone's been calling her. That little girl, Bridget, she didn't write the name. She remembered it. A thunderstorm strikes Glen Rock. Lightning blows the fuse box at Bridget Lyle's school. When janitors return power at dawn, they find every mirror in the building cracked from the inside. Room 12's desk split open, and on the chalkboard, 13 brides, 12 mirrors, one mouth. Verity speaks now. Surveillance footage shows Bridget walking into the building at 2:13 a.m., but her home security camera confirms she never left her bed. This wasn't a sermon. This wasn't a system. This was a countdown. And you just heard the last number. Because when Verity speaks, the others wake up. Accomack County, Virginia. A Civil War-era graveyard on private farmland, untouched for over a century. Until this morning, local farmer Wendell Moore reports his tractor stopped midfield. Its GPS scrambled. Its front wheels stuck on something soft. He digs by hand. Hits wood. Not a root. Not a stump. A coffin. One of 13, aligned in a perfect circle. Each has no name. Just a single word carved on the lid in rough script. No. Deputies open the first casket. Inside, a woman's skeleton, clothed in an antique wedding gown. Her jaw unhinged. Mouth filled with black silt and broken glass. But the vocal cords? Fresh. The FBI is contacted by an anonymous source calling himself Simeon. He delivers a reel-to-reel tape in a lead box. Label, The Choir of the Unwed. Recorded live, April 3rd, 2020 inch. The audio garbled but haunting. It begins with silence, then soft humming, then 13 female voices, singing in perfect harmony. The lyrics, one never wed, two never grieved, 3 had their faces buried beneath. 4 were named, but not believed. The 5th was called Verity. In the background, the sound of dirt moving. Forensics confirm the voices were recorded underground, simultaneously, at human breathing rates. But here's the problem. Every frequency in the tape matches previous live recordings from 12 different revival churches, which means all 13 were singing together, across states, across years, across death. Children across the country begin reporting the same nightmare. A woman in a mirror, wearing a shattered veil, singing in reverse, "Fold me down, fold me wide, say the name and let me rise." Hundreds of reports from children aged 7 to 10. Psychologists call it mass imagery contagion. But one therapist, Dr. Grace Stills, notices something darker. All the children, whether in Portland, Tallahassee, Chicago, or Santa Fe, draw the same thing. A circle of 13 women, holding hands. In the center, a mirror with no reflection. Investigative journalist Tasha Green, still recovering, mails a package to the WAFB 9 newsroom. Inside, a torn Bible page from 1899, a burned wedding invitation, and a note. They were never brides. They were vessels. Every marriage was a binding. Every grave was a key. But the mirror is a door. And Verity was never locked inside. We were. You thought they were buried. You thought the silence meant safety. But Verity was never trying to rise alone. She's raising the others. And when the last bride sings, you won't need a mirror to see her. Cherrywood Rest Home, Trenton, New Jersey. 94-year-old Elsie Navarro, mute for over 2 decades after a massive stroke, suddenly stands during bingo night and begins screaming. The words are clear. Stop her. She's not a bride. She's the mother. You've buried her children. Staff call 911, but when paramedics arrive, they find Elsie completely calm, smiling, humming. She says, almost sweetly, "Verity's home now." Then collapses. Heart failure. She dies en route to the hospital. A nurse goes through Elsie's belongings, finds an old notebook, dated 1947. The entries are disturbing. We closed the last mirror today. 6 brides turned back, but not the 7th. She followed me home from the circle. She said I would speak again on the day the choir breaks the gate. There's also a newspaper clipping. Tragedy at Verity House Asylum. 7 missing in overnight blaze. May 6, 1947. 6 of the missing were nurses. The 7th, a patient known only as the mother. Real name? Unknown. Diagnosis: religious delusions and glossolalia. Speaking in tongues. She was committed after interrupting her daughter's wedding, screaming, "She's not your bride. She's a vessel. Don't let her say my name." FBI agents locate the ruins of Verity House Asylum in Cumberland County. What they find underground: 13 broken mirrors arranged in a spiral, a scorched wedding altar, and a door with no hinges, no knob, just a carved inscription. Speak her name, and the bridegroom awakens. But here's the thing: no door frame, no opening, no seam. Forensics confirm it's not a door at all. It's glass. One enormous mirror pane, 12 feet tall. Behind it, just darkness. And in that darkness, movement. Within 48 hours, 6 people who've seen the glass in person begin experiencing loss of speech, facial paralysis, repetitive humming. Doctors call it cognitive inversion syndrome. But one survivor, Dr. Rachel Ling, manages to write a single sentence before slipping into a coma. She is no longer behind the mirror. The mirror is behind us. For decades, they thought the mirrors were the gate. But the truth is, they were the lock. And every sermon, every resurrection, every so-called miracle revival was turning the key. Osage County, Kansas, a farm long abandoned. But tonight, a neighbor hears screams from inside. Sheriff's deputies enter. They find a man in a tattered suit, barefoot, shaking uncontrollably. He's surrounded by wedding photos, but all the faces are burned out. He won't stop whispering, "I buried the 12th, but she wore the wrong dress." He gives his name, Daniel Morrow, but that's impossible. Daniel Morrow vanished in 1983 on his wedding day. He was 24. He's still 24. No signs of aging. No ID. No explanation. Only this. On his wrist is a faded hospital band from Verity House Asylum. FBI forensic techs recover the wedding photos from Daniel's farmhouse. What they find: 12 women in identical poses. 12 different chapels across 5 decades. One constant: the same man, Daniel, standing beside each bride. Hairstyles and dresses may change, but the groom never does. He hasn't aged in 40 years. Facial analysis confirms it. Same jawline, same scar above his left brow. But here's the twist. None of these weddings were ever registered. No licenses, no records, as if the ceremonies happened in churches that weren't really churches. One photo, taken in 1966, shows a chapel with a strange steeple cross. Texts trace it to a now abandoned roadside chapel outside Carthage, Missouri. Inside, 13 pews, one scorched pulpit, and behind the altar, a wall-sized mural. It depicts a mirror cracked down the center. At the base of the mural, bridegroom, bride, and the broken word. And at the very bottom, a final faded phrase. She is not his. She remembers. Back in Baton Rouge, something strange happens. Children from the Covenant Revival Center begin drawing pictures in Sunday school. But they're not of Bible scenes. They're sketches of women in cages made of glass, men bleeding from their mouths, holding wedding rings, and a chapel with a cracked mirror, bleeding like a wound. When asked who taught them this, one girl answers, she did, the bride behind the floor. Another boy whispers, she says we're all asleep, but he's still hungry. Daniel was never a groom. He was a witness, and each bride, a sacrifice. They weren't marrying someone. They were marrying into something. And the 13th, she's not ready to forgive. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the desert sky over Sedona, Arizona, is pierced by the screech of a car crashing. A live stream is still running. The man behind the wheel is Reverend Michael Graves, leader of a small church called Sanctum of Renewal. His last words echo, she's coming. The bride, she wears a mask, and no one will recognize her until it's too late. Police find his car mangled at the base of a cliff. Inside, a cracked phone still streams static and faint whispering voices. Weeks later, the FBI cross-references Graves' sermon with other disappearances. They discover Graves had been investigating the Covenant Revival Center's past. His church was linked to a series of mysterious marriages, none with official records. Graves disappeared 3 days before the crash. Even more chilling, a series of anonymous photos sent to the FBI. Photos of women, faces blurred out, each wearing a different wedding dress, but all with the same pale, expressionless mask. One woman's file is labeled, the bride with no face. Inside the Sanctum of Renewal, FBI agents find a hidden room. On the walls, torn wedding invitations, prayer candles melted into shards, and dozens of cracked mirrors, each etched with a single word: remember, forgive, betrayal. A small altar holds a porcelain mask, expressionless, eyes hollow. Handwritten beneath it, she takes the faces of those who break the covenant. The Covenant Revival Center survivor, Nia Coleman, contacts authorities for the first time since the chaos began. She warns, they're sealing the floors in more churches. The bride walks through the cracks, and she's looking for the next one to wear her face. The bride without a face is no ghost. She is vengeance, a curse, a warning, and if she finds you, she will wear your face next. Jackson PD gets an anonymous tip. A church floor in the historic New Hope Fellowship is covered with fresh, shiny wood planks. The entire sanctuary smells faintly of burnt incense and old smoke. Police pry up the boards. Underneath, a shattered mirror, and etched around the edges, dozens of names. One name circled twice in crimson, Lady Obika. Detective Marcus Reed receives a chilling voicemail from an unknown caller. She's coming back for the final vow. The last bride. The one who never said I do. Beware the mirror's reflection. Marcus feels a cold shiver. He knows that vow isn't just a promise. It's a curse. Inside the church basement, a young woman is found, her clothes torn, eyes wild with fear. Her name? Leah Simmons. Leah claims she was held prisoner, forced to take part in a secret resurrection ritual. They said the mirror is the gate, that breaking it would unleash her, but I didn't know who she was until the bride showed me her face. Leah's voice cracks, and now, I think she's coming for me. Across Jackson, mirrors in homes and churches begin cracking on their own. Phones light up with texts of a single phrase. The final vow is near. Nia Coleman disappears again. This time, no one sees her face. The bride's final vow is about to be taken, and with it, the last secret will be revealed. But who will survive the ritual? And who will be left only a mask? Detective Marcus Reed and Leah Simmons arrive at an abandoned warehouse on the edge of Jackson. Inside, walls lined with shattered mirrors. Each shard reflects a different face. Not their own. Leah gasps. This is where they hold the brides, trapped between reflections. Suddenly, a whisper. You should not have come. From the darkness, a figure steps forward. The bride. Her face, fractured, shifting, a mosaic of stolen faces. She smiles. Do you see me, detective? Or are you just seeing yourself? Marcus raises his gun, but the reflection in every mirror moves independently. Leah screams as her own reflection pulls at her from inside the glass. Mirrors explode, glass shards fly like knives. Marcus is thrown backward. Leah vanishes into a mirror, screaming. The bride's voice echoes. The final vow is not a promise, it's a sentence. Marcus grabs a shard of mirror, its surface rippling. He touches it, and is pulled inside. Darkness swallows him. Inside the mirror world, faces stare silently. Among them, Nia. Marcus is trapped in the bride's world, a place where reality bends and time fractures. To save Nia, to stop the curse, he must face himself. But what if the darkest reflection is him? Marcus blinks. He's standing in a warped version of the warehouse. Walls ripple like water. The air hums with a cold, eerie silence. Ahead, Nia sits on a cracked throne made of mirrors. Her eyes empty, distant. Help me, she whispers. But be careful, the bride watches. Suddenly, dozens of mirror shards rise, circling Marcus like vultures. The bride appears flawless, her smile razor sharp. You wanted to face yourself? Here you are. She raises a hand. Reflections of Marcus appear, each a twisted, nightmarish version. One laughs maniacally. One weeps blood. One screams silently. Choose one reflection. Your fate depends on it. Marcus's heart pounds. He reaches out, touches a reflection, his eyes glowing red, fierce and unyielding. The mirror shatters. Suddenly, Marcus is back in the real warehouse. Nia is gone. Breathless, Marcus stumbles outside. Leah waits, bruised but alive. She trapped me in a mirror prison, Leah says, but I found a way out. Marcus looks back at the shattered glass. We're running out of time. The bride, she's getting stronger. Back at the church, Marcus and Leah dig through old records. They find a dusty, leather-bound journal, Bishop Harper's personal diary. Pages stained with tears, then blood. The last entry reads, "The vow binds us, past, present, and future. Breaking it means losing everything, but staying bound means eternal damnation." They discover the final vow is a secret ritual Harper forced on his brides. Women promised resurrection, but trapped forever beneath the church floor. The vow was never about love. It was a curse. Leah pulls Marcus aside. I was one of them, she admits. Her eyes darken. I took the vow to save my little sister, but the bride, she's my older sister. Marcus's world shatters. Leah's older sister, Amara, was the first to take the vow. She became the bride. Amara betrayed them all, trapped their souls in mirrors, feeding off their pain. Leah and Marcus rush to the old Harper family home on the outskirts of Atlanta. Dusty photos, faded letters, and a hidden room behind the basement wall. Inside, a shrine, candles, mirrors, and cryptic symbols. Leah finds a letter addressed to her from Amara. The letter reads, "Dear Leah, I never wanted this curse. Father's sin trapped me here. But there's a way out. A sacrifice must be made. You are the key. Forgive me. Leah breaks down, clutching the letter. Marcus digs into Bishop Harper's past. Turns out, Harper wasn't just a preacher. He was obsessed with dark rituals to resurrect his wife. He sacrificed his own family to fuel the curse. Suddenly, the mirrors around them fog up. Amara's ghostly face appears. Her voice echoes. The curse grows stronger. Trust no one. The bride will rise. At midnight, Leah and Marcus return to the church basement. The floorboards tremble. The sealed coffin cracks open. A pale hand reaches out. The bride. Amara is awakening. Amara steps out, her wedding dress torn, eyes glowing with a cold fire. Her voice is a whisper that cuts through the silence. He betrayed us all. The curse must end tonight. Marcus finds Harper's old journal. A final ritual, to bind the curse forever, must be performed. But it requires a life. Leah's or Marcus's. Suddenly, Marla, the choir director, appears. She reveals herself as Harper's daughter. Her plan? To sacrifice Leah and claim the curse's power for herself. Leah's heart pounds like a drum. Marla steps closer, eyes cold, a twisted smile curling her lips. You don't get to end this, Leah. This power is mine. Marcus steps between them, hands trembling. Marla, this has to stop. You're destroying us all. Marla laughs, harsh, brittle. You don't understand. This curse isn't a curse. It's a legacy, and I'm ready to claim it. Marla pulls out a rusty dagger, a family heirloom stained with decades of dark history. She lunges toward Leah, but Marcus tackles her, the dagger skimming his arm. Blood spills onto the cracked wooden floorboards. Suddenly, the mirror on the wall shatters, hundreds of shards raining down. From the shadows, Amara's spirit shifts. Her pale skin fades, revealing a monstrous figure, eyes blazing red. Her voice echoes, haunting and powerful. The blood of Harper runs through your veins, Marla. You are the key. But the mirror holds the real power. Leah crawls toward the largest shard on the floor. Engraved on the back is a strange symbol, a twisted cross surrounded by 12 dots. She recalls the prophecy of 12, whispered by Nia. 12 souls trapped by Harper's curse. And Marla is trying to release them. Suddenly, the church doors slam shut. The lights flicker. A shadowy figure appears behind Marla, another Harper descendant, watching, waiting. A voice, low and cold. You think you can wield the curse alone. The real power lies with me. Marla falters. The tension explodes. Blood on the floor. Shattered mirrors reflecting more than just light. A family torn apart by greed and darkness. And a secret so twisted it could destroy them all. The figure steps forward, tall, cloaked in black. His voice cuts through the thick air. I'm Ezekiel Harper, the last heir, the one who controls the curse. Leah's breath catches. Marcus clenches his fists. Ezekiel's eyes burn with cold fury. Marla was weak, but you have potential. Ezekiel gestures to the shattered mirror, shards glowing faintly. Join me. Together, we can harness the power, free the 12 souls, and rule. Marla looks torn. Leah stares at Ezekiel, calculating. Suddenly, Marla steps back, shaking her head. I won't let you use me. Ezekiel smirks. Then you'll die. He raises his hand. Shadows swirl. The room temperature drops. Leah and Marcus prepare to fight, but it's clear this enemy is unlike anything they've faced. Leah notices a faint glow behind the altar. She rushes over and pulls a hidden lever. The floor beneath them trembles, revealing a staircase spiraling down into darkness. The heart of the curse. Ezekiel whispers. Leah, Marcus, and Marla descend. The walls are covered in cryptic symbols and old photographs, faces of the lost 12. Whispers echo from the shadows. Leah shivers, feeling the weight of centuries of pain and betrayal. The trio stands before an ancient altar, carved from black stone. A circle of 12 dusty glass jars surrounds it, each faintly glowing, each containing a swirling mist. A chilling voice echoes. Each soul trapped inside holds a piece of the curse's power. Leah's heart pounds. Marla steps forward, whispering, To break the curse, we must free them all. But each soul will take a life in exchange. Marcus tightens his grip on Leah's hand. Who pays the price? Ezekiel grins, stepping closer. I offer you a choice. Join me and share the burden, but gain control. Or refuse and watch everything burn. Leah feels the weight of his words crushing down. Suddenly, the jars begin to crack, releasing ghostly apparitions that scream for release. The chamber shakes. Leah, Marcus, and Marla brace themselves. Leah looks at her friends, eyes blazing. We don't have time to hesitate. Leah reaches out, touches the nearest jar. A blinding light envelopes her. When it fades, one jar is empty. But Leah staggers, clutching her chest. Blood trickles from her lips. The curse has begun to unravel, but at what cost? Leah stumbled backward, the taste of iron sharp on her tongue. Her fingers trembled as she withdrew from the shattered jar. The mist inside had vanished. Around her, the other 11 jars pulsed faintly, restless, alive. Marcus rushed to her side, his eyes wide with fear. She's hurt, he said. Marla knelt, placing a hand on Leah's forehead. Blood loss, but not fatal. The curse's toll, she whispered. From the shadows, Ezekiel Harper's smile widened, predatory, triumphant. You've made your choice, he said, voice low and cruel. The debt has been marked. Leah's breath hitched. This isn't just a curse, it's a contract, she said. Ezekiel nodded. Long ago, my ancestors made a pact with a spirit of vengeance, binding 12 souls to our family's church. Each soul imprisoned here grants power, but demands sacrifice. That's why they never left. Marcus swallowed hard. So freeing them means paying with lives? Yes, and not just any lives. The bloodline must pay. Marla's voice was steady but grim. We have to find a way to break the contract, or we lose everything. Leah pushed herself upright. We need answers. The church archives. The original pastor's diaries. Anything that tells us how to undo this. The group hurried up the narrow stairs, the church eerily silent around them. In the dusty basement, they found an iron-bound chest, chained shut. Marla retrieved an old, rusted key from a hidden compartment under the altar, the only key that fit. Inside, journals, faded letters, and an ancient, leather-bound Bible filled with strange symbols. Leah opened the Bible. Between the pages was a folded parchment. Her eyes scanned the faded script. It was a prophecy. When 12 souls are bound by blood and stone, the curse will hold, but the debt must be known. To break the chains, a life must be given, by one who bears the gift of the risen. Leah looked up. The gift of the risen, that's me. Or I guess what I am. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Leah's hand shook. My birth was marked by strange signs. I survived a fire no one should have. I don't know what I am, but I'm tied to this curse. Marla nodded. Your bloodline, the key. Suddenly, the room chilled. From the shadows, ghostly figures began to emerge. The trapped souls. They wailed in sorrow and rage. One stepped forward, a woman in a charred wedding dress, glory. Her eyes met Leah's. You must finish this, she whispered. Behind them, Ezekiel raised his hands. End this now, or be consumed. The air crackled with dark energy. The cold in the basement deepened, like the breath of something ancient and unforgiving. Leah's pulse hammered in her ears, loud enough to drown out the wailing souls and the sinister hum Ezekiel Harper had summoned. Her hands trembled as she moved to the altar, the air thick with shadows curling like smoke around her. Marcus, Marla, she called, voice barely steady. This is it. Marcus's face was pale, eyes wide with desperation. There's got to be another way, Leah. You're not the one to pay. You're the one who survived this curse. It should protect you. Leah shook her head. Protection comes with a price. Protection comes with a price. And I'm the last hope for all of them. Marla stepped closer, her fingers clutching a worn Bible pressed against her chest. The prophecy was clear. To break the chains, a life must be given by one who bears the gift of the risen. That's you. Ezekiel Harper's voice sliced through the silence, low and venomous. Do you really believe you can undo what's been sealed for centuries? You think your bloodline matters? Leah stared at him, unflinching. It does. And I'm done running. The trapped soul circled, faces twisted with centuries of pain and anger. A woman in a charred wedding dress emerged, Glory, her gaze fierce yet pleading. You must finish this, she whispered, voice like wind through dead leaves. Leah swallowed, her throat dry. What happens after I do this? She asked. Glory's eyes softened for a moment. You free us, but it will cost you everything. Marcus stepped forward, desperation breaking his voice. You don't have to do this alone, Leah. We can find another way, together. Leah looked at him, the weight of the curse settling on her shoulders. I'm not asking for your pity, or your sacrifice. This is my burden. The basement grew darker. Shadows writhed, shifting into monstrous forms. Ezekiel raised his arms, chanting in a language older than the church. The temperature dropped further. Breath became visible, frost forming on the cold stone floor. The soul screamed, a chilling symphony of sorrow and rage. Leah planted her feet firmly. I accept the price, she said, voice resolute. Her hand hovered over the altar, the same altar where her ancestors had once made the fateful pact. She closed her eyes, fingers brushing the cold surface. A sudden surge of light exploded from the altar, blinding and pure. The souls began to rise, shimmering with newfound freedom. Glory reached out, her spectral hand almost touching Leah's. Thank you, she whispered, but the price revealed itself in an instant. Leah gasped as a sharp pain pierced her chest, a burning, searing agony that stole her breath. She collapsed, clutching her heart. Marcus caught her, panic flooding his eyes. Leah, stay with me. She managed a weak smile. This is the price we pay for salvation. Ezekiel screamed, fury breaking like thunder. No, this can't be. You will pay for this. Dark energy swirled around him, but the blinding light from the altar cut through the shadows, scattering them like mist. The curse shattered, the basement filled with the whispers of the freed souls ascending, voices full of relief and peace. Leah's vision blurred. Marcus held her close, tears streaming down his face. You're going to be okay, he promised, but even he wasn't sure if it was true. The battle was over. The curse was broken, but as Leah drifted into unconsciousness, she felt it. A faint pulse beneath her skin, a whisper in her blood. The gift of the risen, alive, but dangerous. Leah felt a sharp pain in her chest. Her vision blurred. Marcus caught her before she fell. Leah, she smiled weakly. This is the price. Ezekiel screamed in fury, but the dark energy around him shattered. The curse's hold broke. The souls ascended, their whispers fading into peace. Leah woke in a hospital bed, Marcus by her side, tears in his eyes. Marla stood near the window. Outside, the church burned, not by fire, but glowing with a cleansing light. Leah touched her chest. The pain was gone. The curse was broken, but in her hand, a small glass shard glimmered. The mirror was shattered, but fragments remained. A whisper echoed softly. The heart of the curse beats on. Months later, Marcus received a package. Inside, a small, sealed box. He opened it, revealing a single, unbroken shard of the cursed mirror. A note. This is not over. The gift will awaken again. Leah's eyes darkened. The doors of New Covenant Baptist in Chicago groaned open as federal agents swarmed the sanctuary. Dust floated through narrow beams of light from the stained glass, painting jagged crosses across the pews. The altar still bore burn marks. What had once been revival flame had become the ashes of unholy rituals. Leah Danvers stood silently before it, arms crossed, eyes hollow. 2 weeks had passed since the events in Atlanta, since she'd freed the trapped souls beneath Holy Spirit Tabernacle, since she'd nearly died. They hadn't found Ezekiel Harper's body. Ma'am, Agent Renee Waller approached, voice soft but firm. We've cleared the basement. Same signs as Baton Rouge, Detroit, Dallas. Floor insulation removed. Salt line tampered with. An altar buried under 2 layers of concrete. Leah turned slowly, but no names. Waller shook her head. Only one scratched on the mirror. She held up a photo. The name read, Glory. Leah's heart thumped once, hard. Again, Waller frowned. You said she was freed. She was. Leah took the photo, studying the scratched letters. She's not doing this, she murmured. She's warning us. Marla Thompson's voice crackled through the walkie. Leah, you're not going to like this. The girl, Nia, she's missing. Leah stiffened. What? She was with her aunt in Houston. They were supposed to meet me at the safe house. Aunt's car was found abandoned 2 hours ago. The window was shattered from the inside. Back at the Covenant Crisis Archive, a warehouse converted into a joint FBI Paranormal Task Unit, Marcus paced. His hand hovered over the board of names and red strings. Every church, Leah. Every damn church they sealed the floor. What if that wasn't to trap something in? What if it was to hold something out? Leah sat, eyes flicking to a name near the bottom. Karen Matthew, age 14. Disappeared, July 2001. Church, Red River Revival Tabernacle. She pointed. That's who Nia's been talking to. Marcus blinked. What? After Atlanta, I stayed in her room. Her floorboards had scratch marks under the carpet. Names. One of them, Karen. Nia circled it. I thought she was just mimicking Glory. No, Marcus said slowly. She was being contacted. They returned to Shreveport, Louisiana, the ruins of Red River Revival Tabernacle. With clearance, they descended beneath the blackened chapel, through a trapdoor no one had noticed since 2001. The air was thick. Old blood, charred wood, burnt silk, and in the center, a circle of mirrors. 12, to be exact. All intact. Leah crouched, reaching out to one. Her fingers barely grazed the edge when she heard it. A breath, then a voice. He never buried me alone. She turned, not scared, not anymore. A girl's reflection stared back from the mirror. Karen Matthew. Her lips moved, but the words came in Leah's mind. We were the first choir. He said he'd bring our voices to heaven, but we weren't dead yet. He broke our necks and buried the mirrors where no one would hear us scream. He needed 12. Tears pricked Leah's eyes. Why 12? A covenant needs 12 gates. 12 seals. 12 voices to guard the 13th. Leah's chest tightened. Who's the 13th? He called her the door. At precisely 3:17 a.m., the city of Baton Rouge lost power. All of it. Hospitals, police stations, street lamps, cell towers, and in the ruins of Covenant Revival Center, a girl emerged barefoot from the earth. Nia. But her eyes weren't hers. They were pitch black. And behind her, crawling from the altar grave, was Ezekiel Harper, his mouth full of ash, his eyes full of stars. Leah stared at the full list on the board. The FBI had compiled it with help from survivors, former members, even leaked church registries. 12 girls, each from a different church, each missing since 2001, each with the same tattoo under the tongue, a broken mirror. She had the last piece in her hand now, a page torn from an old seminary ledger. It read, Project, Gatekeeper, by the authority of the founding 13. And the mirror shall not reflect what God did not form, but what he forbade to live. Leah dropped the page. Oh God. Marcus stood beside her, grim. You figured it out. She's not the victim. She's the seal. Nia was brought in 2 days later, sedated, unconscious. Except when they played the recordings. Audio logs from Rebirth. The USB of private rituals recovered earlier. Every time a file played, Nia's fingers twitched. Her mouth moved. And when they reached the last file, April 2020, she sat straight up. Her voice was not hers. He sang to the dead. I screamed louder. Marla backed away. That's Glory's voice. That's her cadence. Leah leaned forward. What do you want? Nia's body smiled. It's not what I want. It's what I never got. It's not what I want. It's what I never got. A resting place. Then take it. We'll bury the mirrors. We'll seal the floor. We'll finish the ritual. It's too late for sealing. He opened the 13th gate. The voices he stole, they're loose now. In the wood. In the bones. In the choir. At First Zion Evangelical in Detroit, a church abandoned since 2009, the choir began singing, but no one was there. Locals reported music after midnight, all in reverse. One detective collapsed during an inspection after hearing a voice whisper from under the organ. The mirror is the gate. By Friday, 6 churches reported mirror anomalies. By Sunday, 11 were declared structurally unstable. On Monday morning, the 12th mirror cracked. Back in Chicago, Leah stood before the last unbroken mirror in the FBI evidence vault. This one had been recovered from Red River's ruins, never cataloged. Its frame was carved from bone. The glass was fogged. She stared into it and saw her own face blink back. But behind her reflection stood Ezekiel. He leaned close. "Did you think I'd let you close the last door?" Leah turned in real life, nothing behind her. But the mirror began bleeding, and a sound leaked out. Children, singing, "We are the choir. We are the gate. We are the price he couldn't pay." At 3:17 p.m., the mirror shattered. Every church on the map, Detroit, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, Atlanta, Dallas, all burst into flame simultaneously, and at the center of each was a name, burned into the altar. Glory. Leah raced to the vault, wind howling through the corridor. The vault door melted inward, not from heat, but from light. There, standing barefoot in the center of the wreckage, Nia. But her eyes were blue again. She looked at Leah. "Is it over?" Leah dropped to her knees and held her close. "I think so. I think she went home." 6 months later, the Covenant investigation was closed. All 13 mirrors have been cataloged and buried with rights by a coalition of pastors, survivors, and historians. Marla returned to teaching music in Atlanta. Marcus opened a support center for occult survivors. And Leah, she took a sabbatical until she got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, a mirror shard and a note. "You missed one." At the bottom, written in blood red ink. Name number 14, Leah Danvers. The gates weren't meant to open, but neither were they meant to close. 13 names started the fire, but it's the 14th who carries the ashes. If you believe in uncovering the truth and standing for justice, we'd love your support. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your voice matters, and you help make this community stronger. We'll be back with another case, right here on Unraveled Crime.